this is my first time in Salt Lake in Utah. It's beautiful out there. I get a chance to travel all over the country. I don't do quite as much as I used to, but it's awesome out there. So what an awesome place this is. I can't wait to come back again. For all those folks that are Rob, Sean, I've heard a handful of other names that put this conference on, all the sponsors, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun. I'm excited to be out here and hang out with you all for a couple of days. Before we get started, I'm kind of curious. This is a new audience for me. I don't know a whole lot about Solidus as a product and a platform, so I've appreciated everything everybody's told me today and last night at the speaker dinner about the platform. It seems really cool. The community seems pretty awesome. But if I can get like a hand or two, who here would consider themselves like a tech lead today? Something like that. Maybe do architecture or things along that line. I'd say anybody who's like a core team member, I would say, you're definitely a tech lead. How about just, you're a developer, you've been doing this for a little while. Raise your hand if you're in the development space. How about like program, product management, maybe programmer or project manager? Anybody in that realm? Cool. Who here would call themselves a leader? It's a trick question. Actually, you're all leaders. So, but that's okay. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So, I work for a software development agency. Rob mentioned that's primarily in the Midwest area. We've got folks all the way up to Colorado and Vermont, but mostly in that Pittsburgh, Ohio, Pennsylvania area. Where our home base is in Dayton, Ohio, like a growing metropolis. It's about a third the size of Salt Lake. So it's fun to be there. But when I first joined Sparkbox, this was 6, maybe 7 years ago now, probably about 7 years ago now, I'd have a conversation with one of my good friends up there. His name's Rob Har. He's our vice president. And Rob and I would talk about what it meant to grow this smaller team that we had at the time, about 7, maybe 8 developers, and grow their leadership skills, grow them and give them new experiences. Now, Rob and I had a background in consulting, okay? So he and I would jump from client to client. We didn't work together, learn about new businesses. We kind of had to learn, think on our feet, figure things out as we went along, navigate new personalities, new technical stacks. I was in the .NET space for the most part. I actually love it. I don't really feel like I'm recovering. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I learned quite a bit. But we'd have this conversation, and we knew that it was the variety that helped us grow, right? It was jumping from client to client and exploring new worlds and learning from those. It led to us learning quite a bit, quite fast. And we were trying to figure out how do we help this team that we knew had to grow, right? We're about 50 folks now. How do we help them get those experiences? Because they're really talented. How do we help them grow into the leaders that we need them to be as we grow the company, okay? And so I've spent about 6 years now working on that problem, helping us grow to about 50. Before that, I was, architect, tech lead on a number of different projects. So I knew how to do it myself, but I didn't know how to help other people necessarily grow into that role. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to share with you, in my mind, in Sparkbox's mind, what a tech lead looks like, what that role looks like. I want to talk about also what it looks like to grow folks and grow yourselves into that role. So as you can, I got to put a big disclaimer over the top of this thing, and you can probably already tell, like this is heavily bent and heavily framed by Sparkbox. Our business, which is client services, building software for other companies. A lot of it is in the retail e-commerce space, but it's all over the map. We work with startups. We work in the energy industry quite a bit, but it's definitely leans towards those. It also is heavily bent towards the culture that we've worked really hard to develop over the last 10 years or so. Certainly the last 6 or 7 years while I've been there. And then finally, my history, is a big part of all of this because it's what I know. And while I do lean on a lot of other people, both in our organization and outside, to learn, my history, my background comes into play for a lot of this stuff. As we leave this talk and we get a chance to hang out maybe over lunch and this evening, I'm super interested. All of those folks who have kind of put their hand up to say, I've been a leader, I'm a tech lead, core members, I'm super interested in that. I had a chance to talk with a few core, or at least one core member last night, and I was super curious, what does it mean to be a core member on an open source product? Because that's pretty different than what we do. But I'm super interested to hear how these things resonate with all of you, okay? So let's start with just kind of at a high level, abstract perspective, what is a tech lead, okay? And for us, the first thing is a tech lead is a partner, specifically a partner with what we'll call a project manager. Now you may not have a project manager, and that's okay. You may not have somebody called a project manager, but I guarantee you there's somebody who cares about the investment that's being made into the work that's going into a project or an initiative or something like that, as well as the outcomes for that. Like, what are they going to get for their investment? And for us, we're working with a lot of companies, a lot of clients that don't know what it means to build software, all right? And so when they're doing that, we have a project manager there to kind of shepherd them along, help them understand what's important, what the process looks like, help them feel in control of this process, feel like they're a part of the process. That's important to us at Sparkbox. And as a tech lead, what we're asking of you is to be kind of a partner with that project manager to help make that move along, right? To weigh options, because there's always options. There's always decisions to be made, right? To understand what the state of the project is and to surface that state of the project to the people that care about it, whether that's the client in our case, whether that's the community in this case, or other partners, the ambassadors as a good example, as well as to look at what the next step. So you take some of that information in and you're looking for the next steps and making decisions about how we're going to use that investment over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever that might look like. And that's the biggest part of the partnership effort that these folks are going to go through. A tech lead's role changes. When you're an individual contributor, your goal is to make sure that the things that you own, the things in your purview, are moving maybe across a board if you're using something like Kanban or Scrum. Like, you're focused in on features, and you may be collaborating to some degree on what the overall architecture looks like with other folks, but a lot of times you're kind of narrow. You get to go kind of narrow on a product or a scope of an overall product or project or suite or portfolio of applications. When you're a tech lead, you change what your goal is, what your outcomes, or success outcomes look like, and you start to be measured by the success of the team, right? The success of the project. That's really important mindset to change. And you'll find that this can be kind of a trap too sometimes, because where you used to just hammer down and be a great developer, moving cards across the board, you were really fast. Remember, you're a successful developer. You've been doing this a while. You've shipped some software that works, that people like. And now it's your opportunity to help other people do that. And the same things that you used to put in, the same techniques and skills that you have don't always apply wholesale to a project. You can't just bear down and try to get more code out. Your goal is to work with the team and enable the team. And that's a big, important difference here. In order to do that, as a tech lead, your responsibility is to make sure other people know what's going on and know where our vision is. Because when you're zoomed in on a problem, and you've probably done this, let's just take a really contrived example. When you're working on, let's say, in Rails or in Ruby, on a controller action or a model or something like that, and you're focused down in there, you sometimes lose sight of the overall picture, right? It's easy to do those kinds of things. And that ability to zoom in, but also zoom out on a project is really important. And it is something that I think is learned, right? It takes some experience. It takes some time. Many people just fall into it naturally, but it's also something that I think, in my mind, you can practice by taking moments, scheduling some time, honestly, on your calendar to learn these things. But you need to be able to describe this and convey this to folks on a regular basis. But it also means you have to have a vision, right? And I've heard a lot of talk here this weekend about what the vision is, what the future looks like for the Solidus platform. That's an important thing to have, and it's important for everybody to understand it. So when I hear about core team members, when I hear about Wednesday, I hear about similar topics of creating a vision for what this platform looks like so that the rest of the community, the ambassadors, those people who are joining Open Source Fridays, have an opportunity to contribute and do it effectively. Because one of the worst things you can do as a maker is to contribute something and not see it used. So having a vision that's appropriate, being able to do things right, to step in and do things that fit the vision is really important, and that's on you as a tech lead. And that takes practice, it takes time. You're going to be doing a lot of different things, and we'll talk about some of the techniques that I think are really important that we use at Sparkbox. This talk actually is kind of a yanked out of and a condensed version of a workshop that we do at Sparkbox that we built to train our own employees It's an all-day workshop called Build Right Sustainable Software. It's Build Right is a series of workshops that we do, but sustainable software is really the one we built. And we like to go out and teach folks. That's a big part of what we do. So we've taken this workshop that we built to help our own team grow, and we go out and we do things like this, right? We talk to folks. We do this workshop. We've done it in Pittsburgh. We're going to do it in Cleveland. We've done it in a handful of other places as well. But that's something that we think is really important, and we talk about some of those techniques to help describe and create vision for a team that needs to consume it and build within it. So as you're helping enable a team to work, and you're going into the problem of delivery, maybe that's over that couple of days, couple of weeks, whatever, and then zooming out to talk about the vision, right, and understand the vision and figure out what the plans for the next steps are, you have a responsibility to start to model what it looks like. When you're, for better or worse, when you are given a title and it has the word lead in it, your actions weigh more, okay? And I know that we want to be open to everybody being leaders and things like that, but there's just this, it seems to be this innate habit of us to look at folks who have the role of leader, who express those things, who are coming to us with these leadership qualities, traits, responsibilities, and we watch what they do and we tend to model it. And so it's ever more important, it's exponentially more important that you retain the discipline and the wherewithal to model the behaviors that you want to see, okay? And that will show up later on down the line towards the end of this, where it becomes especially important for our tech leads to model this behavior. So that's things like if you have an expectation that you always submit a PR before you merge to master, something silly like that, like we're talking about Git, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever. You don't get to pretend, because you're now tech lead, that you get to just kind of shove things in there and avoid reviews, right? You don't get to avoid and pawn things off that maybe you don't like to do, like testing or something like that, off to other folks. It's your turn to explain things really well, provide context, describe things really well. That's important, and especially important for tech leads to do, because they're going to hope to see those things. I can't describe for you what it means, how it works, how we work together means for your company. We publish ours. The link down there at the bottom, I've got the slides out there that I can share or publish if you want. But we've published what ours looks like. And this describes across a couple of different facets in our organization what it means to work together. And it's ever evolving, like it changes and it's different between different teams and things along that line. But like the core responsibilities, expectations that we have for folks on our team live right there, okay? Some examples. If you're in Slack and you're giving a response to somebody, if you're in a pull request and you're giving a code review or recommendations, we expect thoughtful responses. We don't expect curt, hey, we should do this instead, right? Another example of that is for our team, we have an expectation that you're going to give kudos inside of PRs, probably about the same amount that you're going to ask, hey, what about doing it this way, right? That you're going to offer up suggestions, ask questions, things like just as much as you're going to praise what you see in there, especially if somebody's doing something new because of the work that you've mentored them in accomplishing. You're going to leave projects better than you found them, right? For us, that's things like build and deploy pipelines, which I'm really excited to hear about later this afternoon, taking Solidus from development to production. I think that's near and dear to my heart, and we're going to talk some more about that here in a little bit. So those are some of the examples of things that are defining how we work, and we're pretty explicit about it, and that's important because we're remote, we have people all over the place, we're bringing new folks in. We want them to be able to understand what does it look like to work on a Sparkbox project, all right? Now this one kind of wraps it all together. This one really, in my mind, sets the stage or sets the expectation for what it means to be a tech lead. And that's their primary role is to empower, to support, to lift up the rest of the team, to put people in a position to be successful. And we talked about that a little bit earlier by spreading the vision. Now, there's an awful lot of ways to do this. If you talk to half a dozen tech leads here, folks who have filled that role, leaders in general, what it means to empower people, how do you go about doing all of these things that I've just talked about, these abstract level things, they'd probably have a pretty diverse set of responsibilities. Now, we break this apart break some of the skills, some of the traits, competencies, if you will, experiences that we're looking for in a tech lead, but also trying to create tech leads across 5 categories. And we'll talk about that here in a second. The categories themselves aren't super interesting, really the content in them, but it helps provide some bundles there for people to learn and focus on as they develop a career path, okay? The first one is you got to be kind of good at what you do, right? You can't show up and not have had any experience delivering software. We need you to be pretty good at least one core area of the software that we build, right? And for us as the client services, that spans a lot of different tech stacks. So we're going to hit like Laravel, we're going to hit Rails, we're going to hit a lot of JavaScript stuff, Node, front end, React, Vue, all the things, right? So it's pretty broad. But we need you to probably be a go-to expert in one area of the code base. Now that can also be a trap, right? Because then all of a sudden you become capable of delivering features, and you got to balance that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. For me, just as a quick anecdote, that's probably like API design patterns, software design patterns, architecture, integrations, data contract modeling. That's where I feel comfortable. If we've got a system where there's a lot of that going on, I can help out a lot, right? I feel comfortable. If it's HTML, CSS, we're building a design system or pattern library or what have you, we've got great people for that, right? I'm not going to be that tech lead, even today. If it's React and Vue and things along that line, I do pretty well. But we have a lot of folks that are really good at that. And if we have a project that's heavy React, I've heard some really neat stories about some projects that folks have going on here using things like Create React App. I would expect you to be pretty good at that, okay? Because you're going to be looking for opportunities to enable other team members. You're probably going to be mentoring a little bit. You need to know how those pieces work together. So that's important. It also means you're probably going to be the go-to person or a really good person to help debug some of the hairiest problems that you run into, right? The team is going to get blocked at some point, and they're going to look to you. And it's helpful for you to have had the experience of trudging through nasty software, debugging really weird things with HTTP requests, looking at load balancers, debugging things, installing APM tools, all that kind of stuff. Like you're going to get called in to do that. But of course, that can be a trap as well, because if you're not mentoring and teaching those folks, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Sorry. One of the ways that you can support folks, one of the ways that you can lift up, enable, allow teams to become leaders on their own, right, is to put them in a position to be successful. When we're looking at where a tech lead fits in from a technical perspective, one of the things that we're looking for them to do is find seams in a system, seams in your architecture. Now that's a term that I don't know is super well known in the system. I think it may be something that we've talked about. But what these are often like described as interfaces between different things. It could be the way you decide to model your component structure if you're in a React app. Maybe this is the way that one part of the system integrates with another. The way that you interact with your database. Those are the logical boundaries between parts of your system. And we're looking for seams in the system because it allows folks to kind of fan out, start doing work, making their own decisions, which is really important to creating new leaders, right? To enabling folks, to being a delegator. So we create systems allowing people to go to work. And now all of a sudden, our world changes. Our responsibility as a tech lead. Once folks are able to go and work on their own, and kind of build things out. Maybe it's multiple teams, maybe it's individual members on teams, maybe they're pairing on things, but what we want to do next is find a way to create some feedback loops, because what you just created as a tech lead is actually one of your biggest downfalls. When you create seams, you allow people to go and kind of work independently, you've created risk, and that risk is built into assumptions, right? We've planned out some work, but we have no idea if that's going to work. We've planned out how two parts of a system are going to integrate. We have no idea whether or not that's going to be successful and functional when the two teams come together. So now it's my turn as a tech lead to find as many opportunities for those team members to collaborate. That's through things like CI, build delivery pipelines, if you're using Heroku, for example, you got review apps. That's kind of cool. We can have 2 review apps collaborate with one another. We create points of integration, so we're always looking for opportunities for those systems to integrate. That's really important. So we've created productivity by creating seams in our system, designing seams in our system, planning out seams as a tech lead, and now we're looking to find ways of validating the assumptions built into those seams by creating opportunities for collaboration. Having that pipeline available, allowing folks to see what the outcomes are of their work, allowing us to share that with the world, creates these different feedback loops, supporting things like transparency, risk reduction, things along that line. If somebody throws over, if you're working with a client or a business unit that gives you a problem, says, hey, come back to me in 3 months, that's your real feedback loop. That's a challenge for us. At Sparkbox, that's a problem. We don't work really well that way. We say we're sometimes, we tell some of our clients that we're pretty needy. We need to collaborate. We need to talk with you on a regular basis because we're trying to give you the opportunity to navigate these projects with us, trying to figure out our way to the end goal, because we know that we're going to know more about our projects tomorrow, about your problems tomorrow than we knew today or at the beginning of a project. And so our goal is to create lots of different feedback loops. For some developers, or for some teams, you're looking for a really deep pipeline that allows these review apps or deployment of PRs and things along that line. We're certainly looking for like master to get deployed on a regular basis. That's awesome. Tests, things along that line. Those are all important. You might be looking at some really cool tools. We happen to be really big fans of CodeClimate, so we use both CodeClimate quality as well as CodeClimate's velocity tools. Those are feedback loops on our products, and we really appreciate some of those tools, and those are important to us. Across all of this, there's a saying I heard years ago, and it's kind of stuck with me. I can't attribute it to anybody. I should probably Google this and find out who said it, because I've repeated it often enough that it's really not appropriate for me to claim credit for it. But it's that leaders should always be focusing on creating new leaders, right? One of the best ways you can do that is by giving them opportunities to lead, to make decisions. We do that in a couple of different ways. One is by creating that vision, by communicating, by sharing what's going on. We also do that by communicating with our clients and sharing our ideas with context, okay? Being able to clearly, regularly articulate what our vision is, what our ideas are, to be able to offer up opportunities for other people on our teams to share their ideas, to help them prepare to clearly articulate the ideas that they have within their systems, provides both a leadership opportunity as well as a communication opportunity for you to practice those things. And there's always, if you're not a tech lead today, there's lots of opportunities to do that. If you have new technology, new interests, things along that line, there's always an opportunity to write about them, right? So you're going to be creating, as a tech lead, you're probably going to be drawing diagrams. As a non-tech lead, as you're picking up cards, you have the opportunity of drawing a diagram to describe, hey, this is how I think things are going to fit. Does that make sense for everybody? If you're a part of a planning session where you're describing how 2 systems will integrate with each other, you can draw diagrams. You can prototype payloads going back and forth, or interfaces, data going back and forth, if that's appropriate. This lives on the front end as well as the back end. System integrations, all these things are possible and necessary. And they set out to clarify assumptions, to reduce risk on projects, and just to enable people to go and work and be effective decision makers on their own. They don't always have to be coming back to you necessarily as a tech lead. As teams work together, as teams are out there building things, as individuals, especially younger team members, less experienced team members, I guess not younger, but less experienced team members are out there working on your projects, there's always going to show up opportunities to pair with them, to work, to mentor, and things along that line. Providing feedback, clarifying feedback, jumping in on PRs. It's important to be able to do this with grace. I've worked with plenty. I've been the tech lead who's kind of rude, probably not crude, but rude, curt in comments and things along that line. The only thing you do is cause people to stop asking you questions, stop coming to you, and then you stop being a leader. It's really important to be doing these things with an open mind, an empathetic mind, a patient mind, and looking to build up new leaders on your organization through your mentoring, through your comments. That's one of those reasons why we say it's important on our team, on the Sparkbox team, that you be providing just as much praise in things like pull requests as you are feedback or thoughts or ideas in pull requests. It's really important that you be mentoring folks to follow in your footsteps, because eventually they're going to become leaders on your team, and you want them to be building the next leaders as well. Oh, I was looking for an audible sigh on this one. Not always. There we go. So when I talk about managing projects, I'm not asking for tech leads, and when I'm looking at tech leads, I'm not saying, hey, I need you to be managing Jira. I need you to be starting sprints or whatever and looking at budget and things like that, necessarily managing those budgets. But remember I said we need to be a partner to our PMs. We need to be a partner to those who care about the investment that's being made, the outcomes that are coming with this thing. So you need to care about those things too, and you need to work together. Our goal in all of these things is to provide our clients, our PMs, and our team the ability to navigate our project to success, right? The place that we think we were going to go with a project is very rarely exactly the place that we want to go at the end of the day. Things change. We misunderstand at the beginning of initiatives. So we need to have an understanding of things like constraints, budgets, time. We get a lot of clients that show up after a little while that we're working with, and they say, hey, I've got an opportunity in this market. If I can just make this left turn for a little while, I think we can actually increase revenue. We can actually get this out to different users. We can POC this with a new category of customer. We want to be there for our customers. We want to help them be successful. And that doesn't mean executing, and I think everybody generally agrees with this, executing a plan just for a plan's sake, right? And if you want to talk to me, we can talk about how we set up projects and engagements with customers to allow for those types of things, because for some people that's kind of scary, right? We all of a sudden start to think about change of scope and things along that line. But I'm happy to talk about that. That's not necessarily important for right now, but it is important to setting things up. Our goal is to be able to guide decisions, right? You have a very unique insight into the overall problem. At Sparkbox, usually our tech leads are a part of, for new clients at least, are a part of what we would call a discovery effort. Those are a couple of weeks, a week to 3 weeks worth of effort to really understand a client, to understand their problem, to understand their business, so that we can give them an idea of what we think it's going to take to get where they want to go. And when our tech leads have that insight, they're able to bring back some context from those experiences. They understand where the software is. They've built software before, so they can help guide these decisions with our clients, and they're having regular relationship conversations, partnering decisions. And one of the other big parts of that is, in order to be able to navigate your projects, we need our tech leads to make sure that work, and they don't have to necessarily do all of this, but they're making sure it happens at our organization. They need to be able to break these things down into chunks of doable work, right? If we're working in large chunks, big releases, we don't have the opportunity to navigate, and this gets into some of that agile stuff, whether you like it or not. At Sparkbox, we're scrummish, and we do it pretty well. So we're looking to deliver things in like a week, which works really well for us because we invoice weekly. So they're seeing their investment turned into reality, turned into working software, and they can take a look at both of those things together and make new decisions. That works out really well for our customers. It works out really well for us because we feel like we're all in control of what we're delivering. And our tech leads are a part of that. They need to be a part of that conversation. So when we have the ability to navigate our project, because we've got little tiny pieces of work that we're delivering, we're involved in discussions about budget. We understand our PMs care about it, but they're working with us, and we're making new decisions about what's next. I guarantee you, and I know this is a contentious issue, but somebody's going to ask about a forecast. They're going to want to know, hey, when am I going to get this thing? When am I going to see this thing? I mentioned that we're scrummish at Sparkbox. How you decide to provide a forecast is up to you. I've seen a lot of different techniques. We do things like relative sizing. So at Sparkbox, it's important that our tech leads know how to guide a team towards an economy. Right? And I use that word on purpose, that term economy, because that's really what we're creating on our teams. And we have a unique way of kind of doing that. I'm happy to talk about it afterwards, how we do it. I think we actually have some writing on how we tend to do it. But at the end of the day, our goal is somehow to tell those folks, what they can expect over the coming weeks, months, or years. And we do things like provide ranges and expectations. We know that it's not going to be exact, so the further out we estimate or provide forecasts, the bigger range. But suffice it to say, if you don't provide it, they're going to find somebody who will. And this is one of those places where opinions become fact really quick, all right? So you need to be able to provide these things to some degree to folks who care about these things, because they are putting an investment in and they need to know what the outcome will look like. So when I'm interviewing folks, when I'm talking to folks on our team who want to become tech leads, who want to take this leap, I should call out at Sparkbox, and I think this is pretty true at most of the places I've been. The idea of a tech lead or an architect is not necessarily a career ladder step. I mean, it takes some experience to get there. Clearly, it takes some skills and things like that that are built over time. But it's not something that you achieve and you stay there, okay? This is a role that you take on projects, and that's kind of nice for us. It provides some flexibility. It allows us to find the right project for the right people. So if you're relatively new, you think this is something you want to try, you have a certain skill set, a certain set of experiences that you've been on, we can find a project that's kind of like that, where we know you'd be successful on your own, and maybe put you there to be a tech lead with a couple other folks, and explore the idea of what it's like to practice these things in a kind of a safe environment, to gain new experiences, right? And one of the things that I'm hoping, because I know that every project there's going to be a problem, right? I've never been on a project where everything went glorious from start to finish, right? I don't know if you have. Please, come and do a talk. I'm certain that somebody will step down because everybody in this room wants to know how you did it, including myself. But there's never been a project that I've been a part of where everything was rosy from start to finish. And so stressful times are going to come. So your ability to recover from those is super important. You have to be able to deal with pressure. You have to be able to deal with negative feedback. And it's going to hurt. And you're going to want to react. And that's okay, right? Your job is not to be perfect, but your job is to recover well, to keep composure, to keep empathy. Because a lot of times those types of feedback are coming because the investment these folks are making, they're being called on it too, right? And they're hoping to see the outcomes of these things. And at some point you're going to show something, maybe it's a demo, maybe it's 3 months down the line, where things aren't exactly what they thought they were going to be. Or they hear feedback from one of their own stakeholders that says, that's not really what I meant. And they're losing it inside themselves, and they're nervous, okay? So you need to be able to stay empathetic to them. You need to be able to stay positive for your team, knowing that you're going to have to solve this problem, right? And make sure that you stay persistent. And of course, one of the worst things you can do when things go south is start to hide it, right? One of our first reactions is, especially when we're a really good developer, when we've been successful in the past, is like, I can fix this, right? I'm a tech lead. I'm in charge to some degree, right? I've got this promotion. And this is our opportunity to bear down, use our skills, and deliver this thing. But really what what you need to be doing is being incredibly transparent, okay? You need to be showing people what the state of things is. One of the best ways to deal with some of those situations, one of the thing that greases the skids for bad conversations is maintaining healthy relationships with all the folks on your team, your clients, people that care, and being transparent with them all the time, right? The biggest thing we want to do is avoid having surprises. As a tech lead, your responsibility now is not to just focus in and let somebody else know so that they can have the hard conversation. It's now on you to partner with that PM and have that conversation with people. And it's scary. But when you've been talking to people on a regular basis, when you've been talking to maybe like the architect or tech lead on the other side of the fence, right? Maybe on the other team, or talking to the customer on a regular basis, these conversations, they're usually not too bad. You can usually see them coming, right? And they're usually happening in a normal situation, something where heated and reaction is less likely to happen. So it's really important that you be able to do those. It's also important that as a part of healthy relationships, you be able to receive that feedback yourself, right, from your team members. And opening those kind of conversations up, asking them, how do you think I'm doing? Do you feel like you understand what's going on? Do you feel like you're successful right now? Have we given you what you need? Those are important conversations to have with your whole team on a pretty regular basis. So all of these provide some certain opportunities for you. When you take on these leadership opportunities, whether it's a tech lead, whether it's like a lead developer or whatever they might be, you own a feature, something along that line for delivery within a product already, it comes with a whole bunch of opportunities for you to be impactful both on projects and also on people, okay? Certainly, you're going to be doing things like PRs, you're going to be looking at the code base, seeing how it evolves, seeing how the architecture evolves. You're going to be creating documentation, maybe you're creating cards, writing cards. For us, one of the things our tech leads are doing is they create a technical strategy, right? This is a vision for the project. Maybe that's a 2 to 4 month project. Maybe it's a 2-year-long project. If it's a startup, we're probably creating a vision with a short and a long-term, a couple-year vision for where this thing could go. And they're creating documentation, they're doing technical writing, they're creating diagrams, they're talking about how they expect the architecture could evolve over time, where we can scrimp early to get new value out, things along that line. Those are certainly impactful decisions because they're enabling the team to work effectively and work towards that vision. And they're also, have opportunity to do some guidance and mentoring. But I want to give you an anecdote about a project that happened a couple of years ago where you can have a lot of impact with your technical skill, with your experiences, with some of these opportunities. So we had a client, this is a pretty darn simple scenario, and I bet most of you have done this at some point or another. We had worked with a client 4 or 5 years ago. They had an application. It was pretty cool. The technology doesn't really matter. But they came back to us and said, hey, our team has kind of shrunk. We're not quite as, they've left, they're out in the valley. It's really hard to keep folks on. The folks that really understood this platform, this product, weren't really with the team anymore. So we had a good understanding of how this thing worked. At least our tech lead did, and I did. I had helped with some of the early work on this project. And we knew that we needed to help them out. And they said, hey, we've got a new opportunity. It was in Japan. It was an opportunity for them to go to a new market, but their application wasn't localized, right? Like it didn't have support for Japan, right? Or any other language for that matter. This is a pretty simple problem, right? Nothing big. But they only had a couple of weeks to get this done. And the product had been around for 3-4 years. So it's not small, right? They built lots of features at the request of customers. And so you can imagine that's probably a lot of content on this thing that needs to be localized. Some of it, as we knew, is probably going to be pretty simple. So we split it out into 2 categories. The first is like, this is static content. No big deal, right? We know how to solve for that. We're going to have somebody go off, and we're just going to have them create like a little module, function, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. And the only job that thing has to do is given some text, it's going to turn it into localized text, right? So we said, hey, go out and create this thing. It should take in some text, and it's going to return some text in return, and it should be localized. At first, you don't even have to localize it. Just spit the regular content back out. Spit it back out. It's a no-op. No big deal, right? While that person was off working on that, our tech lead was over here saying, I wonder if we can fit I18N next in this. So this actually, it happened to be a job, but like, I wonder if there's a library that we can use for this. It shouldn't be that big a deal, right? We know we have some complex computed translations we're gonna have to do where you get data, you get money, you get numbers, things like that, content, your name, whatever. And we're gonna have to translate those. Those are the second category of thing. And so when the tech lead went over and talked to that folks, he said, I need you to create this function. It's just going to go ahead and take a string. It's going to return back another string. But I need you to remember that at some point, we're going to be given some context, some data in there that's going to be smooshed in with the rest of it. I need you to keep that in mind. Okay, that's no big deal. We've done that before. Not a big deal. So while those folks are off creating that, our tech lead went over and looked at some of the other ones, created a couple proof of concepts for how we might do that, picking out some libraries. We had 2 relatively inexperienced folks that had only been on the team for about 6-8 months. They had left our apprenticeship that we run. It's about a 6-month long. So they hadn't had a whole lot of software. They hadn't built software before, right? They'd practiced it, but they hadn't really done it. This was a great opportunity, a pretty well-constrained opportunity for them to get involved in building some software, right? The first step towards them gaining experience, becoming a better developer themselves, and maybe eventually becoming a tech lead. So they went off and they used this new contract that we had built out. Our tech lead had created a seam in the system where folks with less understanding, less experience, could be effective, could find work, could make decisions on their own in the context with what they needed. Had somebody with a little more experience out building what that seam looked like, building it out early, getting some experience, hey, this is the seam we're going to create. Now this tech lead is offering up this opportunity to the more experienced developer to see what it's like to make some of these decisions, to find what a seam looks like, to enable other people, two people with less experience. We've now got a pretty cross-experienced team working on some things. They don't all have to be lead developers. They don't all have to be superstars that have been doing this for 8 years, right? We supported a team growing, right? That's having impact on an organization because I now got 3 people with new experiences on localization. That's not a hard problem. But because of the way we were able to execute on it, because we had a strategy, because our tech lead was offering other people opportunities to build things out, and we were giving experience to new developers, everybody is now more experienced than they once were. That's having an impact on an organization, that's having an impact on a client, and we were able to do it in 2 weeks. And 2 of the 3 developers had never really shipped production software before. What an awesome thing to put on your resume 2 to 3 weeks out of an apprenticeship. So, as a tech lead, as somebody who wants to be a tech lead, raise your hand if you said you were a tech lead, right? Okay, so you've walked down this road before, right? And hopefully you're talking to other folks in your organization who are eventually going to become a tech lead. Raise your hand if you're a manager, if you manage a few folks and things along that line. These are some opportunities for you to look at, and you as an individual, for you to look at growing your own organization, for you as an individual who want to become a tech lead. As a tech lead, hopefully some of these sound familiar, and you've been walking through them. One of the things that I'd like to say is true, but is probably less true than we'd like to believe. I think this is especially true because I always thought it was true, but now that I'm in a role where my core responsibility is to build up my team, I realize that I'm not actually as good at this. Is that the actions of our team members speak for themselves, right? That I know everything that's going on. I know every experience that my team members are seeing. And that's just not the case. So as individuals who want to become tech leads, you're going to have to make a plan. There's going to be some things that go on. As managers, as tech leads yourself, or technical directors, or whatever, you need to be conscious about these things. So one of the things that I think is really important for you to do is let's have a plan, right? Have a plan for your people, have a plan for yourself. We do kind of every half-year goals at our organization. We have our tech lead description written up. We know what it means. Most of this stuff is in there. And we'll go through that, and we'll say, hey, have you had an opportunity to do this? If not, let's find that over the next 6 months. Here's some examples. We ask our team members to start doing the same thing. Go through this description, go through this, and try to find experiences in your existing projects. Let's create a plan together. It might take us a couple of years to get there. That's okay. I can have this conversation with my apprentices now and say, hey, I know in about 4 or 5 years, or maybe less if you get there, maybe it works out. I know that in a couple of years, you're going to want to jump up to this. And that's cool. Let's talk about it. Let's find a way to make that happen. Here's a plan, all right? And we're going to create some goals. We're going to create some actions and things along that line. And we're going to talk about it. I have one-on-ones with everybody on my team. Our tech leads, often, depending on the project and how involved we are, how big the project is, we'll have one-on-ones with individual members on their team. And that's what we talk about. How are things going? Where are you on your plan? Can I help with anything? Is there an experience you wish you would have had that you saw on this project that maybe we can do on another feature? What kind of things are coming up in the roadmap for your project where you can have an opportunity to demo to customers? Maybe you can draw the diagrams for this, work with the tech lead on drawing up the diagrams, and you present it to the team. And instead of the tech lead being the one who does all the work, does all the diagramming, sets the vision, they're helping you do that. This is something a lot of folks on my team have started doing. They're basically resumes, right? At the end, that's what it is. But they call it a brag sheet. When I was having those conversations with our VP 6-7 years ago, about what it looked like to grow our team, we were really worried that one of the things that we would have to do is let people go, not like let them go, but like let them leave, that there's a season for everybody at our company. And that in order for them to gain some of these new experiences, they might have to leave Sparkbox to gain those. And we know that that's going to happen. But we really didn't want it to happen. So our goal is to help build up their resume. That's my goal. My goal is everybody on our team, every year, that they have a handful of new bullets on their resume that talk about how awesome they did this year, right? And some of them have left, and that's okay. There are seasons for their time at Sparkbox, and that's okay, right? Because I know that while they've been there, we've been able to create a handful of other tech leads right behind them, because that's their responsibility as well, okay? Partner with other leaders, we talked about this, the idea that you can work with your PM even now as an individual contributor on a team, maybe around features, other tech leads in the organization. You can work with all kinds of folks. Having a mentor. Finding a mentor outside of your organization is okay too. I've had a chance to talk with lots of folks here. I've had mentors in the past as I've gone through different roles in my career. Those are important. There's times even before you kind of, at least at Sparkbox, so we do a handful of things that are pretty fun, and they're all crafted around the idea of leveling up our team. So every other Friday, we have all team demos it's like kind of like an all hands meeting. It's 1 hour long. They're all recorded. They're done over Zoom for us. And every team is asked to have somebody there to demo, 5 minutes max, what their team has been doing. Sometimes it's a demo about the upcoming features. Sometimes it's a demo about what they just built. Sometimes I just got done. Last week I was in Atlanta hanging out with a new potential client, and we had a tech lead there, the person that will probably be the tech lead on this project. Next week, we're going to have that person explain what the technical strategy will be for that particular client. They're going to help me with that technical strategy and figure out what that looks like. This is an opportunity for them to present their vision, our vision for what this is going to look like, to try to do that clearly, convincingly to our team. It's pretty safe. So every 2 weeks, we've got an opportunity for new tech leads to grow. We do demos with all of our clients every week, right around the same time we invoice. This is an opportunity for them to be in front of customers, to practice that experience. We do planning every week, same time just about for most projects. They're breaking these things apart. It's a pretty collaborative experience. Our tech lead's goal is to facilitate it. They may bring some things with them, but the whole team has an opportunity to talk about these things. It's an opportunity for all of our team members to grow, and all of them to contribute. This is pretty cool. It's a neat opportunity. So everybody in this room is what I would call a maker. And one of the best things, I consider myself a maker, a creator, and one of the best things that you can experience as a maker is seeing other people use your stuff, right? There's no better experience. I had an experience years ago. I worked for a company that did fuel, convenience store kind of company, sold fuel. And we built a rewards program with a kiosk and cards and all these things. And there was one of them right down the road. And I got to tell you, I went to that gas station an awful lot just to see my stuff being used, right? Because it's cool. You love seeing the thing you put hard work into being used. When you're a tech lead, you become a force multiplier. That sounds silly, but at the end of the day, you're enabling a whole lot of team to build towards a vision that you all built together. And you can do more as a team than you can by yourself, right? So your objective is to find a way to enable a whole bunch of people to work towards a vision so you can see some pretty cool stuff out there working. That's a great feeling as a maker. When you have a plan for how you want to get there for all these folks, you're going to have an opportunity to build your career towards some of these roles, tech lead, things along that line. There's opportunities all over the place every single day for you to practice these skills. If anybody here, one of the things that I've done from time to time is I've mentored and talked to folks that are outside of our organization. I love doing that kind of stuff. If you're looking at trying to create a plan while we're here, I'm happy to talk about it over lunch in the evening. You can find me on Twitter and things along that line. We can talk about what your plan looks like. I'm happy to share what our tech lead description looks like. Eventually it will be published. We've just been working through those things. I'm more than happy to talk about what that looks like, to share it with you. You can take that back wholesale if you want to your organization and start creating a plan. Take it for yourself and start checking off experiences that you're looking for in there. It's a great opportunity. If you want to be a tech lead at Sparkbox, if you want to be a developer growing towards a tech lead, we are hiring. Come talk to me if you want. You can find out what all those positions are. We do a whole bunch of stuff. I'm happy to work with you. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.